Have you ever been invisible in a room full of people? Have you ever had something important to offer, but were dismissed before you could even speak? We live in a world that judges by appearances, that makes assumptions based on skin color, age, or how someone looks. But what if the person everyone overlooks is exactly the one who holds the answer? What if the least expected voice is the most important one in the room? The Sterling Room was Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where reservations required 3 months' notice and a single meal could cost more than most people's monthly rent. On a busy Friday evening, the dining room buzzed with the quiet conversations of the wealthy and powerful. Keisha Williams moved efficiently between tables, her server's uniform crisp and professional. At 23, she'd been working at the Sterling Room for 8 months, putting herself through graduate school at Columbia. The job paid well, the tips from billionaires and celebrities were substantial, but it came with its own challenges. She was often the only black server on the floor, and she'd learned to ignore the subtle racism, being mistaken for kitchen staff, customers requesting someone else, the surprised looks when she demonstrated knowledge of fine wine. Tonight seemed like any other shift until the commotion began near the entrance. A Japanese man in his 60s stood at the host stand, speaking rapidly in Japanese to the bewildered hostess. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, but his face was flushed with frustration. Behind him stood 2 younger men, also Japanese, looking equally distressed. "I'm so sorry, sir, but I don't understand," the hostess, Emily, said helplessly. "Do you have a reservation?" The man spoke again in Japanese, his voice rising with urgency. Other diners were beginning to stare. The restaurant manager, David Preston, hurried over, his professional smile already in place. "Good evening, sir. I'm the manager. How can I help you?" More rapid Japanese. David's smile faltered. He pulled out his phone, presumably looking for a translation app. But the older man waved his hand dismissively and continued speaking, clearly agitated about something. "Sir, I'm very sorry, but none of our staff speaks Japanese," David said loudly and slowly, as if volume and speed would somehow bridge the language gap. "Do you speak English?" "English?" The man shook his head and pointed at his watch, then at a table, speaking urgently. One of the younger men tried to intervene, pulling out his own phone with a translation app, but the older man pushed it away irritably. A small crowd had gathered, other servers, curious diners, even the sommelier. Everyone was trying to help, but no one understood what the man needed. The situation was escalating into a scene, and Keisha could see David's face reddening with embarrassment. The Sterling Room prided itself on flawless service, and this was becoming a spectacle. Keisha hesitated. She was supposed to be serving her section, and getting involved in front-of-house issues wasn't in her job description. Plus, there were already a dozen people trying to help. What could she add? But the old man's face, she recognized that expression. It wasn't just frustration, it was fear. Taking a deep breath, Keisha stepped forward. "Sumimasen," she said quietly.
"Excuse me."
The Japanese man's head whipped around. His eyes widened as he took in Keisha, young black, in a server's uniform, clearly the last person he'd expected to hear his language. "Watashi wa Nihongo ga hanasemasu," Keisha continued. "I speak Japanese. Dunasa mashita ka." What happened? The relief on the man's face was instantaneous. He grabbed Keisha's arm and began speaking rapidly, the words tumbling out. Keisha listened intently, her expression growing more serious with each sentence. The crowd around them had gone silent, watching in amazement as the young black server conversed fluently with the Japanese businessman. David's mouth hung open slightly. Finally, Keisha turned to her manager. "Mr. Preston, this is Hiroshi Tanaka. He's the CEO of Tanaka Industries. They're one of the largest tech companies in Japan. He's here for an emergency business meeting, but his translator got sick and couldn't come. His business partners are already here at their table, but he's trying to tell you that his wife isn't feeling well. She has severe food allergies, and he needs to know the exact ingredients in everything before she can eat. He's terrified she'll have an allergic reaction."
She turned back to Mr.
Tanaka and spoke in Japanese, then translated again. "He's also saying this meeting is critically important, a potential $50 million deal with American investors who are already seated. He can't reschedule, but he can't risk his wife's health either." David stared at Keisha, as if seeing her for the first time. "You speak Japanese fluently?"
"Yes, sir."
"I studied in Tokyo for 2 years during undergrad, and I'm currently getting my master's in East Asian Studies at Columbia. Mr. Tanaka spoke again, and Keisha listened carefully before translating. He's asking if I could possibly help translate for the dinner. He knows it's an unusual request, but he's desperate. He says he'll pay whatever is necessary. David looked torn between protocol and opportunity. A $50 million deal happening in his restaurant, with one of Japan's wealthiest CEOs. This could be incredible for the Sterling Room's reputation. But asking a server to translate for a business dinner was highly irregular. Mr. Preston, Keisha said quietly, I can help. My Japanese is fluent, and I understand business terminology. I can serve their table and translate simultaneously. David made his decision.
Do it.
Whatever they need. Keisha led Mr. Tanaka, his wife Yuki, and his assistants to a private corner table where 3 American businessmen were already waiting, investors who looked puzzled by the delay. At an adjacent table, she could see the competition, representatives from a rival Japanese company, who were also pitching to the same investors. As Keisha helped Mrs. Tanaka with her chair, she spoke softly in Japanese. I'll go through the menu with you item by item, and explain all ingredients. We'll make sure everything is safe. Mrs. Tanaka smiled with such gratitude that Keisha felt her throat tighten. The woman was clearly unwell, pale and tired, but trying to support her husband through this important meeting. For the next 3 hours, Keisha performed a delicate dance. She translated business proposals from Japanese to English and back again, explained complex financial terms, and ensured that Mrs. Tanaka's dietary restrictions were meticulously observed. She consulted with the chef personally about every ingredient, cross-referencing with Mrs. Tanaka's allergy list. But more than just translating words, Keisha translated culture. When Mr. Tanaka bowed deeply, and the American investors looked confused, she quietly explained the gesture's significance. When the Americans made jokes that didn't translate well, she softened them into culturally appropriate humor. She was a bridge, making both sides feel understood and respected. At one point, Mr. Tanaka mentioned a concept that had no direct English equivalent, a Japanese business philosophy about long-term relationships over short-term profits. Keisha didn't just translate the words, she explained the entire cultural context, helping the American investors understand the depth of what was being offered. She watched the rival company's presentation falter when they couldn't effectively communicate their vision. Their translator was competent but mechanical, missing the nuances that turned a business pitch into a compelling story. By dessert, the American investors were leaning forward, engaged and excited. One of them, a silver-haired man named Robert Chen, turned to Keisha. Young lady, I don't know where Mr. Tanaka found you, but you've made tonight possible. Your translation is remarkable, not just accurate, but insightful. You understand both worlds. Keisha smiled modestly. Thank you, sir. I just love languages and helping people communicate. Mr. Tanaka spoke in Japanese, and Keisha translated, though she could barely believe the words. Mr. Tanaka says the deal is more than just business, it's about trust and understanding. He says I've shown him that Americans and Japanese can truly understand each other, and that gives him confidence in this partnership. As the dinner concluded with handshakes and bows, a perfect blend of both cultures, Mr. Tanaka asked Keisha to stay for a moment. The American investors had left, and his wife was resting in their car with one of the assistants. Through Keisha's translation, an extraordinary conversation unfolded. Mr. Tanaka sat back down and gestured for Keisha to sit across from him, a significant gesture that didn't go unnoticed. In Japanese business culture, being asked to sit as an equal rather than stand as service staff was meaningful. Miss Williams, he said in Japanese, with Keisha translating for her own benefit to process, tonight you saved not just a business deal, but my peace of mind. My wife could have become seriously ill, and this meeting was too important to cancel. You protected her, and facilitated our business. That is rare. I was happy to help. Mr. Tanaka, I have a question for you. Why is someone with your skills working as a restaurant server? Keisha hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm putting myself through graduate school. The Sterling Room pays well, and the schedule works with my classes. I'm studying international business and cultural diplomacy. Mr. Tanaka nodded thoughtfully. And what do you plan to do after graduation? I'm hoping to work in international relations, maybe at a consulting firm that helps companies navigate cross-cultural business. What if, Mr. Tanaka said slowly, you came to work for me? Keisha's heart skipped. Excuse me, Tanaka Industries is expanding our American operations. We need someone who understands both Japanese and American business culture, who can serve as a bridge. Tonight you demonstrated exactly that skill. I'm offering you a position as my personal liaison for North American operations. The salary would be substantial, and you'd work directly with me, learning the business from the inside. Keisha felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. Hours ago she was serving tables, invisible to most of the diners. Now one of Japan's most powerful businessmen was offering her a dream job. I don't know what to say, she managed. Say you'll consider it. Mr. Tanaka slid a business card across the table. Think about it. Finish your semester if you need to. But Keisha, talent like yours shouldn't be hidden in a restaurant. Tonight you showed me that you see beyond surfaces. You saw my distress when others walked past. You understood what was needed without being told. That's rare. That's valuable. Word spread quickly through the Sterling room. By the next evening, Keisha was a legend among the staff, but not everyone was celebrating. Must be nice, a fellow server, Amanda said with barely concealed bitterness, getting handed opportunities just for knowing another language. Keisha kept her voice calm. I spent 2 years in Japan, worked 3 jobs to afford it, and studied 4 hours a day to become fluent. It wasn't handed to me, but Amanda wasn't alone in her resentment. Some co-workers suggested Keisha had been lucky, or that Mr. Tanaka had offered her the job out of pity. A few made thinly veiled comments about diversity hires, and questioned whether she was truly qualified. David Preston, however, saw things differently. He called Keisha into his office the next day. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. You've worked here for 8 months, and I never asked about your education or skills. I saw a server, and I didn't look deeper. Last night you saved a situation that could have been a disaster for this restaurant, and you did it with grace and professionalism. I'm sorry I didn't see your value sooner. Thank you, Mr. Preston. Are you taking Mr. Tanaka's offer? Keisha had been thinking about nothing else. I don't know yet. It's an incredible opportunity, but I'm also nervous. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? David smiled. Keisha, you facilitated a $50 million deal, while serving a 7-course meal, and managing a medical emergency. If you can do that, you can handle anything. That weekend Keisha sat in her small apartment in Brooklyn, Mr. Tanaka's business card on the table in front of her. She'd called her mother in Atlanta, her professor at Columbia, her best friend. Everyone had opinions, but the decision was hers alone. She thought about the moment at the restaurant when she'd hesitated before stepping forward. How easy it would have been to stay invisible, to assume someone else would help, to believe that she had nothing to offer. She thought about all the times in her life she'd been underestimated. Teachers who suggested she be realistic about her goals, employers who saw her race before her qualifications, classmates who were surprised by her intelligence. She thought about Mr. Tanaka's face when she'd first spoken Japanese, the shock, then the relief, then the respect. He hadn't seen a young black server, he'd seen someone who could help him, and then he'd seen her potential. Keisha picked up her phone, and dialed the number on the card. Mr. Tanaka answered himself. Miss Williams, I was hoping you would call. Mr. Tanaka, I accept your offer. When would you like me to start? 6 months later, Keisha stood in a conference room at Tanaka Industries' New York office, preparing for a major presentation. She wore a sharp business suit, her natural hair styled professionally, her confidence earned through months of intense work and learning. She'd started at the company in January, working directly with Mr. Tanaka on the American expansion. Told was demanding, long hours, high stakes, constant pressure. Told it was also exhilarating. She was learning from one of the best businessmen in the world, traveling internationally, making decisions that affected hundreds of employees, and she was good at it, really good. Today she was presenting to the board of directors, explaining the cultural nuances of a potential merger with an American tech company. As she spoke in both English and Japanese, moving seamlessly between languages and cultural contexts, she could see the board members leaning forward, engaged and impressed. After the presentation, Mr. Tanaka approached her with a rare smile. Excellent work, Keisha. My instinct about you was correct. Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. I'm grateful you gave me this chance. I didn't give you a chance, he corrected gently. You earned it. That night at the restaurant, you could have stayed silent. You could have assumed someone else would help, but you stepped forward. That's what separates extraordinary people from ordinary ones, not talent or luck, but the willingness to use what you have when it's needed. That evening Keisha returned to the Sterling room, not as a server, but as a guest. She'd invited her former co-workers to celebrate her promotion to Director of Cultural Integration, the youngest person ever to hold such a position at Tanaka Industries. David Preston raised a glass to Keisha, who taught us all a valuable lesson about looking beyond the surface. As Keisha looked around the table at faces that had once dismissed or overlooked her, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment, not just because of her success, but because she'd proven something important, that value doesn't come from how people see, but from what you bring to the table when given the opportunity. She thought about that moment 6 months ago, standing in the crowd, hesitating, almost letting the moment pass. What if she hadn't spoken up? What if she'd stayed invisible? But she had spoken. She'd stepped forward when it mattered, and that had made all the difference. We all have abilities that others can't see. We all have moments when we could step forward or stay silent, offer help or walk past. The world is full of people being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated because of how they look, where they come from, or what others assume about them. But here's the truth. The most valuable person in the room is often the one nobody's paying attention to. The one who seems ordinary might be extraordinary. The one you dismiss might be exactly who you need. So ask yourself, who are you overlooking? What assumptions are you making based on appearances? And more importantly, when your moment comes, when you have something to offer, will you step forward, or will you let the opportunity pass because you think no one will listen? Keisha's story reminds us that courage isn't just about being brave in big moments. Sometimes it's about speaking up in small ones. It's about offering what you have, even when you're nervous, even when you're the unexpected one, even when staying silent would be easier. Because you never know, that small act of courage might change not just someone else's life, but your own entire future. The world needs your voice. Don't let it stay silent.